All right, guys, welcome back to the stream. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you're new. Thank you guys, as always, for joining me. And thank you for waiting patiently for the intro to finish up. Hope everybody is doing well on this Sunday. I myself feeling a bit tired. Didn't get the best sleep last night. So definitely feeling it today a little bit. But I do feel as though I'm getting a little bit better as the day goes on, which is good. Yeah, so not everybody's here yet, but as you can tell by the title and the thumbnail, the main topic of discussion today is going to be about the Game Awards and how they seemingly made a change that is causing quite a bit of controversy in the video game landscape. And we're going to discuss the change that was made. We're going to talk about the Game Awards themselves. It is worth noting that tomorrow, Jeff Keighley is going to be announcing the official Game of the Year nominees. And so the timing of the announcement of this change is also quite peculiar because this announcement was made right before the nominations, which I think tells us that there is going to be some type of DLC remake or remaster or maybe both or all three potentially that will be nominated for Game of the Year potentially. So, we are going to discuss this in depth, and I do have a couple things I want to say about it. I do have a couple thoughts, but before we dive into that, got to ask you guys. So, who watched the fight? Huh? Mike Tyson, Jake Paul. Did you guys watch this fight? I'm just kind of curious. I'm not gonna lie. Basically, took over social media over the weekend. Mini Tom, you watched it. Unknown, you just watched the clips. Yeah, so I watched the fight, unfortunately. And man, I'll never watch another fight again. I'll tell you. I was unsubscribed from Netflix, but I got caught up in the hype, you know, specifically regarding Mike Tyson. And I resubscribed to Netflix to watch it. Did not realize it was going to be something that actually took like 4 hours to get to, you know, like it was, I thought when they said the fight was starting at 8 o'clock that it was starting at 8, like, you know, maybe a bit of a build up, but there were like 3 fights prior. I wasn't too interested in those. And the third fight in particular with the 2 females, weird stuff going on there, man, with the one woman like being accused of headbutting illegally and whatnot. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. But Waylark with a super chat says, I thought the Game Awards didn't matter. They don't. They don't matter. They matter as much as we need them to in the moment. For me, the Game Awards matter for 2 reasons. They matter for the announcements. I want to know what new games are going to get announced. And the second reason they matter is for content. I'm just being honest. You know, a lot of people maybe do care about the Game Awards. I don't anymore. But I know that some people still care greatly about the Game Awards, or at the very least are just interested in knowing what's going on. But to me, they don't matter. And honestly, I think after we go over this discussion today, it's a tough one because, it feels like the news regarding the Game Awards made them matter even less to me now. It only matters when PlayStation wins. Not really. I mean, look, I I feel like in the past I got caught up in that a little bit. I remember like in 2021, I think I was like a little bit upset that Returnal wasn't nominated for Game of the Year, if I recall correctly. But after watching the Game Awards for so many years in a row, I realized that, man, this is just a it's kind of like no different than watching that fight on Friday night where, I subscribed to Netflix, I tuned in and I watched it for 4.5 hours. And by the end of it, I'm like, that sucked or was just not nearly as exciting as I expected it to be. And a bunch of people just got rich. And I didn't. I just lost time. I'm not saying the Game Awards are that bad, but I guess what I'm trying to say is you have to just realize that it's about the money and the money involved. There is no honor, there is no integrity. And I think as long as you go into the Game Awards realizing that, you can have a fine time, right? You can just go in hoping to see some games get announced that you feel good about, that excite you, and that, ultimately whoever wins Game of the Year, you're like, oh, okay, cool. And then you move on, right? Yeah, so Devil Shooter, I will say, guys, there might not be, well, it's up to Devil Shooter. He has a bit of a situation going on with his dog, Bo, and he let me know he might not be able to do timestamps for a little while, or they might, if he is able to do them, they might be not as good, for lack of a better term. His dog seems to be having a struggle right now, something wrong with, I guess, his intestinal tract, and he's taking him to the vet. So, Devil Shooter, really sorry to hear that, man. Thoughts and prayers to Bo. Hopefully he gets better, man. And yeah, no worries about the timestamps. You just focus on getting your dog better, and when you're able to get back to it, no pressure, all right? So, wishing your dog the best, man. And Waylark with another super chat here says, some people still call Red Dead Redemption 2 trash because it didn't win. Yeah, that's ridiculous. I mean, that was a pretty interesting year for the Game Awards, I would say. God of War 2018 going head to head with Red Dead Redemption 2, and my thoughts on that basically at this point are both easy Game of the Year contenders. Like, if Red Dead Redemption 2 won over God of War, yeah, absolutely, it's deserved. God of War won over Red Dead 2, deserved, but I don't think God of War winning makes God of War better than Red Dead Redemption 2. And I think if Red Dead Redemption 2 won, it doesn't necessarily make it better than God of War. I just think that sometimes we have these years where there are just games that come out that are just so good across the board at what they do. And they may be very different from one another in a lot of different ways, but they're just so good. And years like that, I would say, are more exciting and more interesting. And obviously, everybody's kind of hoping to see the game that they like most win. But it's like when Elden Ring won Game of the Year. That wasn't my. I don't know. I don't think that was my personal Game of the Year, but it was one of the best games I played of the year, and I was very happy to see it win. It's like, yeah, it absolutely deserves it. So when it comes to like the whole idea of the Game Awards mattering or not mattering, I mean, at the end of the day, it's up to you to decide that, right? How important are the actual Game Awards? I can only give my opinion and what I think, and maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, but to me, after, again, it took kind of watching the Game Awards for 3 to 4 years consistently, like from start to finish and really intently watching them, for me to realize that this is not that legitimate. And it's also not that important. It's a show. It's a show. And there is money involved. There's a lot of money involved. And you can tell that Jeff Keighley and everybody who's trying to run that show, they're trying to keep up maybe I'm being a bit harsh by calling it this, but they're trying to keep up the charade of like, yes, it's the integrity and the honor. And it's like, well, no, it's about the viewership and the money and the spectacle, And the awards are just kind of something that has to be part of it because that's what it is. It's an award show. But, that's why people were absolutely destroying Jeff Keighley in the Game Awards last year, because it was shown, on through some photos that were taken where it says, please wrap it up, where they're not even giving the winners of these awards, more than like a minute and a half to give a speech and say their part. And that's what I mean. And it's because, we can't have the show be 3.5 hours because people don't want to sit here for 3.5 hours. And we got to make sure that we are basically having announcements at a steady pace, or we're going to lose viewership. We're going to lose viewership. But yeah, I don't mean to make it sound like I don't care about tuning into the Game Awards. I'll put it to you this way. If there were no game announcements at the Game Awards, I wouldn't watch them. And I certainly wouldn't stream them. So that's how I feel about going into the Game Awards in 2024. And so I guess that makes for a good preface before we dive deeper into this. But guys, I want to thank you for watching. I want to give a shout out to everybody who can't catch the streams live, but you watch them later on. Really appreciate the viewership. Do me a favor, hit that like button. We're sitting at 67. Let's see if we can pump that up to 100. It helps the streams quite a bit. And a couple of ways you can help support the channel, the content, and the community directly. We are fan funded, so we do rely on that direct support to be able to keep the content flowing. Drop a membership gift, become a member, drop a super chat, or drop a direct donation. These are the 4 ways in which you can help support the content directly. So thank you to everybody who does that and makes this possible. Simply couldn't do it without you. Who's ready for another Death Stranding 2 trailer? I mean, I would welcome it, I would welcome another Death Stranding 2 trailer, and I would hope that if we do get that trailer, we get a release date attached to it as well. But let's go over the new information here regarding the Game Awards and the situation that's unfolding. Being reported by Push Square, it says the Game Awards confirms DLC remasters can win Game of the Year days prior to the nominations reveal. Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, or any other DLC add-on will be eligible to win Game of the Year at the Game Awards. An update to the frequently asked questions section on the event's official website notes says, quote, the Game Awards aims to recognize the best creative and technical work each year, irrespective of the format of that content's release. Expansion packs, new game seasons, DLCs, remakes, and remasters are eligible in all categories. If the jury deems the new creative and technical work to be worthy of a nomination, end quote. The statement then goes on to underline that, quote, newness, gotta love that word, newness of the content and its price/value should be taken into consideration, end quote. With the ballots now closed, Polygon reports that voters were aware of these rules prior to submitting their nominations. While the language in the frequently asked questions is new, it's unclear if the Game Awards has always had this policy. For example, last year's Cyberpunk 2077 expansion, Phantom Liberty, was a highly acclaimed release, although it never made the overall Game of the Year nominations list. It was nominated for Best Narrative, however, so we suppose this is consistent with the above message. Nevertheless, we suspect the statement has been released now because Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree has made the cut and will be one of the Game of the Year nominations set to be announced on Monday. But we're not sure how we feel about that. It's also interesting that in-game seasons are now also eligible for Game of the Year. That means, in theory, you could have a Fortnite season or Honkai Star Rail patch competing against Astro Bot. Obviously, we don't think a scenario like this will occur, but it would be allowed per the rules above. The Game Award nominations and ultimate winners are determined by a panel of media and influencers from around the world who submit their picks. Yes. So for those wondering why I simply don't give a shit who wins Game of the Year, that's why I don't care who wins Game of the Year. I'm going to read it one more time. The Game Award nominations and ultimate winners are determined by a panel of media and influencers from around the world. Okay, so this is where we are with the situation regarding the Game Awards. And yeah, I'm going to put up a poll now. All right. Give me 1 second. All right. Putting the poll out. Hopefully there's no spelling errors. How do you feel about DLC remakes and remasters being eligible for Game of the Year? So, yeah, there's a couple things here I want to talk about. First and foremost, this automatically becomes a joke to me when seasons of a game are eligible for Game of the Year. It automatically turns the whole thing into a joke. Because even though it is unlikely that that could, happen, or that will happen, it's just the very notion, the very idea that, so you're telling me a season of Fortnite could win Game of the Year? And the answer is yes, it could be eligible. No. Just hard no on that one. Now, where things do get a little bit complicated here, in my opinion, is when we're talking specifically about remakes. One of the games that people anticipate will be up for Game of the Year nomination 2024 is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And so Final Fantasy VII Rebirth ultimately is a remake. However, for those who have played it and even just looking at it, it also becomes clear that it is still technically a remake, but man, it's pretty much like a new game. So much was changed. It's not even comparable to the original game in many ways. So I can kind of understand why when we're talking about a from the ground up remake that nearly fundamentally changes the game itself and just keeps certain aspects intact, I kind of get it, I kind of get why it's like maybe we do need to kind of let those types of games be eligible. But at the same time, it's still hard to get away from the reality that, but they are remakes. Yeah, well, that's kind of the argument between people with Rebirth, right? Is, well, no, Rebirth is like a brand new game. But I think what Unico is saying here, he says it's not a new entry in the Final Fantasy series, but it's a rework. I mean, that's the thing. It is. It's almost like a complete rework of the original game. So yeah, I think it fits the definition of a remake. It does change story beats as well to an extent. Yeah, I don't want to get in like spoiler territory. I didn't even complete the entire game, but from what I understand, it does change drastically quite a bit. So that's where I feel like it's kind of a struggle, where it's like, if you get too stingent with the rules, you will be forced to exclude games like that. And it feels a little strange because it's like, I don't know, man, this does feel kind of like a new game when it's all said and done. But by not being strict with the rules, you are allowing things like The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered to technically be allowed to be in the running for Game of the Year. And that's where I feel like there has to be some kind of line. Waylark, you're saying these games like Fortnite have more players than the other nominees. So it makes sense. They want to appeal to more viewers and communities. And I think you're right, Waylark. I do think you're correct in that assessment that at the end of the day, the ultimate goal of the Game Awards is not to maintain integrity, but to increase viewership, to continue to grow the show year over year. And so it does make sense that allowing as many things as possible to technically be eligible may in turn garner more interest, generally speaking. So I do agree with that assessment, but I think it does kind of also highlight the reality of the Game Awards, which is it does feel sometimes like it's a bit of a charade, and I don't like that. It feels like I understand it, though. I want to make that clear. If the Game Awards didn't have any excitement factor, where it's like, we're not here to do reveals, we're not here to do any hyping, we're just here to truly celebrate the medium and honor it, I feel like this show would be a train wreck in the sense that no one would watch it. Viewership would tank. There would be no sponsors. The show probably wouldn't make any money. And it would probably go away, truthfully. And so that's why, like, I kind of do understand Jeff Keighley's position to a degree, where he's trying to walk this line of putting on a consumer-facing show, a show that is meant to generate a lot of hype and excitement, but trying to also keep it focused on the award aspect. But I just feel like as each year goes by and as the show gets bigger and bigger and the viewership increases year over year, I think it becomes more and more obvious that the show is simply becoming more consumer focused. It's more of a consumer facing show now. And as somebody who tunes in for that reason, I'm not complaining. I mean, I would be totally fine if 2.5 hours of the Game Awards was just 2 hours straight of announcements, and then the last half hour is just reserved for running down all the awards. I'd be totally fine with that. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend I wouldn't be. I'd probably tune out after for the last half hour, because I'm not there for the awards. And I think that's why it always kind of makes me chuckle a little bit when we watch the Game Awards. There's all these different categories, and in between announcements, Jeff Keighley's just like, okay, and the winner goes, and they like run down like 3 different categories and just announce the winners, and then they just like move on. And I get it. I totally get it. It's like, yeah, the longer you focus on this, the more people are going to tune out and leave. On to the next announcement. They made this new rule so that The Last of Us can win even more awards. Well, that's what's funny about this situation, Wes. What's funny about it is The Last of Us Part 2 cleaned up in 2020 for the Game Awards. If I'm not mistaken, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on this, I think The Last of Us Part 2 is the most awarded game in video game history. And of course it was going to win. You're talking about the media. That's the whole thing too, is who's voting on it. Who are the judges? The judges are the media, dude. Media and influencers. So of course, people already have an idea in their head of what game's going to win. But that's what's kind of ironic is that The Last of Us Part 2, I think, is like the most awarded game in history. And it's technically in the running again, or it can be, through the remaster that came out this year. And that to me is just facepalm, dude. No. It should be disqualified. It's a remaster. It would be like if Horizon Zero Dawn, I mean, technically Horizon Zero Dawn could be remastered, could be nominated for Game of the Year. And it's like, are you kidding me? Waylark, again, thank you for the super chats, buddy. You're saying Jeff has done a great job helping gaming go mainstream. Having people like Al Pacino presenting awards is crazy. It's been good for the industry. I disagree somewhat, Waylark. And the reason why I disagree is because I don't know that gaming going more mainstream has been good for it. If anything, I feel that some of the worst things that we are being subjected to these days, that we complain about, that we don't like, that we don't want, and I'm not trying to speak for everybody, but I'm talking just more generally and broadly here. I feel like a lot of these things really, this is where they come from. They come from the fact that we must appeal to the masses. There is no more growth. The consumers, the customers we've reached, well, we've hit the ceiling. So now we have to go elsewhere and we have to appeal. And there's, I get it. The growth always has to be there. And I'm not saying it's done nothing good for the industry. I do agree to, that's why I said I kind of half agree and half disagree. I half agree in that, like, it is nice to get more eyes on video games and to get more people involved. And it's not so much that I want to keep people out, like, no, you're not allowed to participate. It's not so much that, as much as it's just, if the people who care the least, but also that happens to be the highest volume of people, get involved, then suddenly that's who these companies are going to cater to. So, in other words, what I'm trying to say is, when something goes mainstream, you're talking about something that was once not appealing to the masses, suddenly being appealing to the masses. And the question you have to ask is, well, why didn't it appeal to them in the first place? It didn't appeal to them in the first place because they didn't care about it. Well, what changed to make them care about it? Likely something that we don't want. Those of us who do care about it, who did care about it the whole time. And this is a problem that I would say that gaming is facing quite a bit today, unfortunately. All right, let me see here. Josh Z with a super chat. Thank you, buddy. He says, the big thing for me with Rebirth is the world map. The amount of work they put into making every area feel unique is crazy. Nobody does that anymore. Yeah, for what I did play of Rebirth, I was quite impressed with the world map, and it was a big improvement over, obviously, Final Fantasy VII Remake. I mean, there was a map. In fact, I would say that the areas in Final Fantasy VII Remake that were a little bit more open and did offer a map where you kind of have to track where you're going, I didn't like the way it was handled in Remake, and I was very much hoping that when they went more open in Rebirth, that it wouldn't be like that, right? It would be better, more well put together, better put together than what we saw in Remake. And I think they did that. So I do agree with that, Josh. They did a much better job, and there's a lot of detail in that world map. I was actually overwhelmed with the amount of stuff with Rebirth. Kazjam, a member for 18 months, says, things going mainstream messes up the things that we love. Everything doesn't have to be for everyone, and I'm pro gatekeeping. Well, I mean, I tend to agree with that, Kazjam, more often than not. I think gatekeeping, it gets a bad rap, but I do think that fundamentally it's just a matter of gatekeeping most of the time represents the preservation of something that, like you said, is not meant to be for everyone. And it's not that it's trying to go out of its way to not be for everyone. Usually when something isn't appealing to everyone, it's because it's offering something that you have to kind of get immersed in. You have to kind of dig a little bit deeper to actually understand it and to actually, jive with it in that way. And I feel like that's kind of, that's the difference between being okay with just appealing to a certain group, or certain audience versus we need to make this for everyone. What's interesting is occasionally we do see those things that kind of they do somehow manage to achieve mainstream appeal and success without trying though. And that's when I think of like Elden Ring, right? Where that's a From Software game through and through. They did not try to appeal to the masses, and yet it found that mainstream success. That is kind of the lightning in a bottle type scenario that I think would be the best of both worlds, but it's so rare that ever happens. Waylark with another super chat says, disagree. Not all games should be for straight white neckbeard dudes stuck in their mom's basement. God damn, Waylark. You escalated that tenfold, bro. That's not what I was saying. That's not what I was saying, Waylark. I mean, I understand who you're speaking to with that statement. But honestly, what I was actually thinking of, because I guess, yeah, there is a certain degree of like, if you're talking about appealing to the mainstream, maybe that can be interpreted as appealing to a certain side politically, which we have seen, of course. But for me, what I was actually thinking of was the dumbing down of intricate mechanics in games, the dumbing down of deeper layered storytelling, the dumbing down essentially of things to make it more accessible, right? And to be able, and I think, to be clear, it's okay to have those things. Like, it's okay to have very simple, easy to pick up and play games, and games that can appeal to everybody. I guess what I'm trying to say here is I think it's okay to have games that are specifically made to appeal to everybody and to be played by everybody, but it's also just as okay to have games that are not necessarily going out of their way to exclude people, but making it clear that we're not trying to make this playable for everybody. Like, we do anticipate there are going to be people that might be interested in this game, and it's not going to work for them. And we're not going to just say, sorry, we're going to change it so it can work for you. No. We're like, this is what it's going to be, and you can either accept that or not. That's really what I was speaking to. But Waylark, I do understand where you're coming from, where, again, I feel like that's where there's too much of a certain type of dialogue when it comes to talking about, the problems in video games and the problems in the gaming industry. There's too much of one type of dialogue that I think dominates the conversation, but I think that there is a lot more surrounding it that does get neglected. But there is no denying, though, before I read the next super chat, there is no denying that the Game Awards being more kind of consumer facing, it is working. To be clear, like, it is pumping up the viewership each year. It is getting more and more people to tune in. It's working. So I understand why they continue to kind of go down this road. And again, if anything, I'm kind of part of that, right? I'm part of I don't even know that I've called it a problem as much as I've just said it is what it is, but I'm part of kind of supporting that, in that, yeah, I'm there for the game reveals, and the new announcements. The Combo Clinic with a $5 super chat says, I want total chaos. Dragon Age and Elden Ring DLC gets Game of the Year nods. So if a DLC wins Game of the Year, this show turns into a clown show. Controversy equals clicks. Yep. I mean, I have to say, like, I don't know that I want the chaos, right? I don't know that I'm like advocating. I want more chaos up in here. But what I will say is that 2024 has been a very chaotic year, more so than in past years. And it's been extremely volatile. But if there's one thing it has proven, is that volatility and that chaos has led to a certain spike in viewership that I think was not previously there. Or if it was previously there, that viewership and that spike was being driven by something else entirely. And so it would make sense that the ending to this year would involve some type of major controversy, something that you're going to see, all of the clickbait YouTube thumbnails and headlines, or if not clickbait, just totally hyperbolic, where it's like, it's over. Like, bro, it's been over. Like, I don't know if you got the memo, but it's been over. Like, it was over back in January, apparently. It's been over every month of every year so far, So, but you get what I'm saying. It's just something that's proven to be a method that works, unfortunately, very well in the year 2024. So, will the Game Awards implement it? Subtext, a member for 27 months. Thank you for the long-term support, buddy. You're saying, speaking of remakes qualifying, do you think Silent Hill 2 deserves a nomination? Well, see, that's what I mean, right? For me personally, even though Silent Hill 2 is a remake, it is still one of the best games I played all year, and for me would be a personal Game of the Year nominee. It would be. So it's one of those things where, like, if I saw it pop up as a Game of the Year contender, I wouldn't be mad at it. I would be looking at it from the perspective of, yeah, man, this is pretty well. I would be looking at it more from the technical side as, like, yeah, it's like, it is a very good game, one of the best stories, but there would, I'll be honest with you, there would still be this kind of lingering thorn in my side if it, like, let's just say Silent Hill 2 Remake was nominated for Game of the Year and then it won Game of the Year, right? I would be like, oh, cool, yeah, I love that game. It was deserving. It is deserving of such an award, but there would be that thorn in my side that would just still think in the back of my mind, like, but it's not a new game. And there were new games that came out this year. You get what I'm saying? Where it's like, no matter which way I slice it, and I think maybe Silent Hill 2 Remake is a bit different when we compare it to something like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, because Silent Hill 2, its whole thing was, we need to preserve the story and make it, keep everything the same and be, extremely cautious about what we change. So it's like, if you do compare Silent Hill 2 Remake to Silent Hill 2, the original from 2001, you realize, like, oh, it's basically the same game, story-wise, dialogue, concepts, gameplay sections, and so because of that, it would just feel like, man, but what about the people? What about the game developers that did something 100% new and original this year? Shouldn't that take priority over this? And my answer to that is yes, it should. So it's why I feel like this situation is a little bit more complicated than some people are making it sound, where, I think there is a fundamental difference between this random DLC pack that came out for $15 for this single player game is being nominated for Game of the Year. I think that is different from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is getting nominated for Game of the Year, or Silent Hill 2 is getting nominated for Game of the Year. I do think it's a bit different. But at the end of the day, I can't escape the truth that a new original product is what should probably win Game of the Year for said year, right? King Sam with the super chat says, remakes being nominated is fair if the game is drastically different from the original, like FF7 Rebirth. DLC should get its own category. Black Myth Wukong for Game of the Year. Yeah, I will be interested to see if Black Myth Wukong is in the running. A lot of people want that game, and I agree with what you're saying there, King Sam. I do think that that's maybe the fundamental difference between FF7 Rebirth and Silent Hill 2 Remake. FF7 Rebirth changes, like, so much from the ground up. I mean, you're talking every facet of that game is being twisted around and reshaped and remolded, to where Silent Hill 2 Remake, every aspect of the gameplay is being twisted around, reshaped, and remolded. But the core of the game's story, the themes, the presentation, all of these things are not changing. They're just being brought up, right? I think that kind of does make a significant difference in our evaluation of this. Excuse excuse me. Perfect Image, you're saying I enjoy remakes / remasters. They let my kids play without GPU / shader issues thanks to updated engines. Elden Ring wasn't for me. For example, it's thumbs up for extra. Yeah, I mean, this is, I would say, why I know people, they always kind of make the jokes about the remasters and the remakes, but specifically with a lot of remakes, I feel the same way, Perfect Image. I mean, if not just for like the idea that my son will be able to play a lot of these games, but even me, like there are games I've missed throughout the years that I know I'm not going to go back and play, and I'm just not going to do that. But if they get brought up, you know, and they have those modern sensibilities gameplay wise, yeah, they definitely catch my attention. But you know, I say this even as somebody like, I think of Resident Evil 4 remake. Resident Evil 4 was one of my favorite games ever, but I enjoyed the remake just as much. So I was really happy to see that game remade. You know, I don't mind enjoying it all over again. That's how I feel about like Metal Gear Solid 3. But yeah, remakes obviously are going to continue. I will say this, I do feel like it has to be done on a case by case basis in terms of like, if you're going to remake a game, you have to really think deeply about whether or not core fundamental aspects of this game should be reworked or changed. Because I think most of the time people would say no, don't do that. That's why I think Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth are kind of interesting, because people seem to be mostly pretty receptive to it. It's like, yeah, go ahead, change it around. You think there should be a 10-year rule on remakes? I mean, yeah, I get I get where that comes from. I wouldn't be, I don't think there could ever be a rule for something like that, but I kind of get where you're coming from. Where a decade goes by, that's, you know, that seems like a pretty good amount of time. It reminds me of The Last of Us Part 1 and how, you know, it's one of these things where looking back on it, it's like, yeah, it didn't need a remake. And I think that that's kind of the struggle, right? Is when you're talking about remakes, it's kind of the argument of like, what needs a remake? Like, what needs it versus what's just, if you remake this, you're kind of just doing it for fun. You're just, not for fun, but you're just doing it to resell it, right? And to pump it out again. I think that's where people get frustrated, where they do tend to feel like there are games that don't actually need remakes that sometimes get prioritized over other games that definitely feel like they need it more. It's not to say that you can't remake these games, but it's just you should at least do these ones first. Do these ones first, and then do the ones that are not, you know, not really on many people's lists. Am I going to stream react to the nominees tomorrow? That depends on what time. I know they are happening tomorrow, but I don't actually know what time. I see that Jeff Keighley just posted about it. Let me see. Tomorrow, Monday, at 9 a.m. PT. So that's funny. It happens when I go live. So maybe I'll have to put my stream out like 5 or 10 minutes early, or I'll go live 5 or 10 minutes early, and we could live react to it. I mean, what are your expectations? I would say, I think we all have a pretty decent idea at this point in time of you know, of what we can expect for the Game of the Year nominees. Let me ask you guys this: are there any games that you think might end up being nominated for Game of the Year that maybe people aren't anticipating? Any games that people aren't expecting? MRPD, you're saying I think Sony will announce an event on the 3rd for the 10th of December. I don't think so, MRPD. I mean, I understand that people are still holding out hope for that. I don't think we're going to be getting an event. Balatro, I've been hearing about that game a lot. Metaphor, Animal Well, Stellar Blade. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess any one of these games could show up. I think Metaphor ReFantasio, I think it was kind of surprising to some people, like how well that reviewed. Like it did. Critically, it did very, very well. I think better than expected. DLC should not get Game of the Year. Well, let me ask you this. Let's talk about that for a moment, right? So the big game that we've been talking about, like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We've been talking about Silent Hill 2 Remake. Let's talk about Shadow of the Erd Tree. Should Shadow of the Erd Tree be in the running for Game of the Year? It's interesting because I didn't play Shadow of the Erd Tree. Instead, what I decided to do was go back and actually platinum Elden Ring. So I was behind, right? My thoughts on this, I'm a little bit split on it because on one hand, the thing that's interesting about Shadow of the Erd Tree is that, and I know this without playing it because I've looked in deeply into it and I've heard a lot of people talk about it. My understanding of Shadow of the Erd Tree is it's massive. That it is basically the equivalent of a new game in terms of content, length, and everything that's on offer. So when I look at it from that perspective and the fact that it's priced at $40, I kind of understand, like, yeah, this is to a lot of people, this felt like essentially some kind of sequel to Elden Ring, essentially. But it's not, right? It's not a sequel. It's not Elden Ring 2. It's not a new game. It is an expansion to an already established game that did win Game of the Year previously. I kind of sit here and I think, like, what if instead of The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, we got some kind of expansion for The Last of Us 2? A kind of spin-off game where it's like it's like an expansion to The Last of Us 2 where it's not like the third game. It's kind of an in-between, you know? And people loved it and it reviewed really well. You know, would we be on board with this idea of, yeah, that should be nominated for Game of the Year? I don't know. See, that's why I think things get a little bit murky there. Because I think some people would be like, yeah, it should be, but others would be like, no, it shouldn't. It's not a full game, right? Waylark again with the super chat says the Felix has an article about a PS5 Pro recall. I know some reports of a few people having problems with heat and Wi-Fi, but never heard of the Felix. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Yeah, this is the first I'm hearing anything about this, Waylark. I have not heard anything about a PS5 Pro recall. Let's see. PS5 Pro recall. I'm not seeing anything pop up. Nothing. Where did you hear about this, Waylark? I haven't heard of PS5 Pros overheating or the worst thing I've heard about the PS5 Pro is some people being underwhelmed by it. Not many, but just like a couple random posts on Twitter of like people being like, I'm returning it because I'm underwhelmed, but that's about it. All they do is lies. Am I wearing pants? Yeah, I'm wearing pants. I would tell you if I wasn't. Any coil whine? Not that I can detect. Raylark, you're saying you heard it from Reddit? Yeah, I would be careful with that because I haven't heard anything, and I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen a single person come out and say that they've had any problems with the PS5 Pro. I've been using mine a lot, and it's been fine. You know, now that I've said that, it will probably break later tonight, but it's been fine, no issues, and I haven't heard any coil whine. It's been quiet. It's honestly, it's working the exact same way that my it is vertical, yeah. It's working the exact same way that my base PS5 was, in that it's quiet. I'll be honest, like I was checking on it to see how much heat it was producing, like by touch and feel, of course. But I was telling you guys, I was having a kind of overheating problem with my base PS5 recently. I could tell you this does feel much cooler. Like it doesn't feel nearly as hot when playing like the same kind of games compared to my base PS5. So you saw on 4chan that the PS5 Pro was a pro version of the PS5. Oh, Broccoli Rob, bro. I don't know. Now that's fake news right there. Rich Rod 908 with a super chat says Death Stranding and Kojima himself need a remake. Whack butterscotch, damn. Yeah, dude, that Rich Rod, that's what Kojima's next announcement is going to be at the Game Awards. Jeff Keighley's going to bring him on stage, and he's going to be like, I'm happy to announce that I'm remaking Death Stranding and myself. I'm remaking... Hideo Kojima is remaking Hideo Kojima. A Hideo Kojima remake. There we go. Did I sell my old PS5? No, I'm keeping it. I think I'm going to give it to my son. He's been playing on PS5 recently. He's been playing some Astro Bot, playing a little bit of Sonic. So I'm like, maybe I'll give it to him. Maybe he's a Christmas gift, you know, surprise Christmas gift. So I had to make a tough call recently. So check this out. You guys know that I tried to pre-order the Astro Bot DualSense when it came out, and I ran into a bunch of problems. I don't know why, but I ran into a bunch of problems where when I tried to go on PlayStation Direct, it wouldn't let me. And when I tried to go, by the time, you know, I tried to, I guess they fixed their website or whatever, it was all sold out, and it was sold out at other retailers. So I'm like, whatever, I passed on it. But then recently, my son, he saw that he's like really into Astro Bot right now. He really likes Astro Bot. He recently saw a picture somewhere. I don't know if it was either a picture or he saw it in a video he was watching of an Astro Bot DualSense. And he was like asking me if he could ask Santa for it. And, you know, I guess all I can say at this point is I talked to Santa. And I'm going to make sure the boy gets his Astro Bot DualSense. And that's all I got to say about that. Anthony Perez. You're saying the Linus Tech PS5 Pro video is odd. The Pro does most things better. They outright say they much prefer how Dragon Age runs on it, yet they call it a tie. It's like PC guys can't bring themselves to fully accept it's good. Are you talking about, because I saw other people talking about it. Are you talking about the more recent Linus Tech Tips video where they build a PC equivalent of a PS5 Pro? Because if that's what you're talking about, I was watching it, and then I stopped because he made it clear that they got to use used parts again, and I was like, oh, okay, well, whatever. Like, that just makes me less interested. It's fine. It's a viable option, but it makes me less interested because Mark Cerny's argument still holds that, like, if you're going to buy used parts to create an equivalent PC and you are going to kind of be like, hey, look, I'm saving money by using used parts, you can buy used consoles too and save money that way. You know what I'm saying? So Mark Cerny's logic still holds up there. But, you know, it's good content for Linus, of course. But what you're saying here, where you're saying like some PC players seemingly can't bring themselves to just admit that it's good. This is a recurring theme around the PS5 Pro, and I've deduced that the reason for this is because of Sony's current reputation. I think that the truth is, right now, Sony has not the best reputation. The PlayStation brand does not have the best reputation. And Sony's gotten, I would say, more aggressive in their approach to just trying to run a successful, profitable gaming business. And they're not really too worried about, garnering goodwill and making sure people, like, everybody is happy. They're just worried about the certain audiences and the certain whoever the product is supposed to appeal to. They're only worried about them being happy. And I think the irony here is that the Pro is not meant to appeal to PC players. You know? So the idea that PC players wouldn't be happy with the Pro makes a lot of sense because it's not meant to get a PC player to say, actually, I will buy a console. You get what I mean? So instead, the Pro is just, it's meant to appeal to console gamers who want the closest thing to a higher end PC experience that you would otherwise have to pay a lot of money for, even more. That's who it's meant to appeal to. Or just maybe if you don't even want the higher end, right? You want the better PlayStation because you play on PlayStation. And I would say if you look at the people who have bought PS5 Pros and the people who are satisfied so far with the PS5 Pros, those are exactly those people. They're console players. I don't know if there are any PC players that actually bought a Pro and are like, I like this thing more than my PC. Maybe that does exist with a very, very, very small percentage of buyers, but that's why I'm not interested in these comparisons because it's like Sony will never win that battle because one of the top comments I saw on that Linus Tech Tips video was a comment of somebody saying it's actually a good thing that you're using used parts for this PC because it just goes to show that PC is even more versatile, right? Where if you don't want new parts, you can buy them used, cheaper, and still customize your rig. And I'm like, that is sound logic. There's nothing wrong with that logic. But but that logic will be used as a weapon against the PS5 Pro and why you shouldn't buy one. And that's where I get lost. And I'm just walking away from that because it's like, listen, man, if you don't want the PS5 Pro and you think PC is better, then just buy a PC. If you think PC is better, even, because you can buy used parts, then go do that. I just think that there are people on the internet who, and it's obvious, right? It's been obvious. There are people on the internet where they will never see the PS5 Pro as anything other than either a scam, an overpriced product, or something that is just not comparable in any way, shape, or form to the PC master race, right? And I'm not interested in hearing what those individuals have to say about the PS5 Pro. I'm not interested in their logic because I know where it comes from. It comes from PC is the best for you, and you think PC is the best all around. So therefore, PC is all you will ever really recommend. And that's fine, right? There are console players who don't understand the PC mentality either, where, there are some console players, and some of them are chronically online, where they will just shit on PC and PC players constantly. But I think it's just, it's because everybody's reacting to everybody else. It's, of course, when Linus made that video, he knew that it was going to cause a bit of a war, where it's like, yeah, it's going to cause a war. But does it matter? I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe it matters to the few people out there. And I really don't think that there are many people like this. I'd be surprised if there was. Maybe it matters to the few people out there that are like, I really can't decide between buying a $700 PS5 Pro or building a rig, building a PC. And I'm like, dude, if you have to even think about that, you probably should just go to PC. You know what I mean? Like that's honestly how I feel, where it's like, you already know what a console is. You already know what it does. And the idea of a premium, better functioning console, it's very simple. You pay a couple $100 more, you get more performance. If you have to question that, and you're questioning, does PC sound better? You probably should go to PC. I don't know, but I've seen some people talk about going to PC, and then they end up not liking it and coming back to console. But John Burkett comes in and drops the first membership gift of the day. John, thank you. My name too is John. So thank you for the membership gift, buddy. I'll add that to the counter. And I have a couple more super chats here. We have Generic White Male says, me and Broccoli Rob are broke. Can I borrow $2? I can't give you $2, but you know what? I can give you a thank you for dropping a $2 super chat. Thank you for dropping a $2 super chat to ask for $2. I cannot lend you $2, but you gave me $2. So, YouTube doesn't allow refunds like that. Yes, nicely though. Maybe, I don't know, maybe what I can do soon though, I got to double check. Although I don't know that this is going to help Generic White Male or Broccoli Rob. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But I should be able soon to drop a couple more membership gifts for you guys with the free monthly gifts that YouTube gives me to hand out. So maybe we could do that. We also have Waylark. He says, people obviously don't watch Linus, LOL. He barely praises anything PC either. People just get upset when people don't say what they want. Yeah, I see that too. And honestly, like from what I was watching, it was funny because when I only watched, I think, like the first 5 minutes of that video, but he was talking about what Mark Cerny said about him, about, buying used parts and how you could just buy a used console. And the way he was talking about it, he almost made it seem like he was going to kind of start taking shots at Mark Cerny, but then didn't, and actually went the other way and started kind of self-deprecating, which I thought was funny because I'm like, I'm like, oh man, is he really about to try to go toe-to-toe here with Mr. Cerny? But he's like, no. I'm like, probably a smart move, So I don't know. I don't watch Linus that much. I come across videos occasionally, and he seems fine. He doesn't seem like he's a fanboy of anything. But obviously he knows that a video like that's gonna get people riled up. And you're right. A lot of times people do just get upset if they don't hear what they want to hear. My whole thing about it is when I hear things I don't want to hear, because I think, we all hear stuff we don't want to hear. I just question why I care. Or should I care, right? Like if I'm hearing somebody's opinion on a game or a product and they're like, yeah, I don't like it, I think it's bad, I just question, like, well, how valuable is what you just said to me? And how much should I let it influence me? But I also take that same logic and apply it to when people say things that I do tend to agree with, right? And I think it's just important to do that because you have to, at the end of the day, realize that. And I've always tried to stress this, and I will continue to do so. So I'll state it like this. If you bought a PS5 Pro, you don't need to justify it. Isn't that something? Isn't that surprising? Probably not, but to some people it might be. If you bought a $3,000 PC, you don't need to justify it. If you bought a Nintendo Switch used off of eBay, you don't need to justify it. Because the only thing that matters is you bought something you wanted and something that you believe will bring you enjoyment. And that's all that matters. Now, maybe, just maybe, at the end of the day, if you buy said product, you go to use it, and you're not enjoying it, then you might have to question it a little bit. But that's something you do on your own terms. That's not something you take to the internet. I mean, I guess you can, but I'm really just speaking to the people out here where it's like you just see this constant circle of people, or it's a cycle that people keep, it's a vicious cycle. They just keep repeating it, where it's like they're just constantly arguing and fighting about whether or not the purchase that they made or that somebody else made is justified or not. And it's like, I think you may have lost the fundamental concept here, the most important fundamental concept, which is you tend to buy things that you believe you're going to enjoy and get something out of. So if you went into a purchase with anything other than that, maybe that's the only time questioning it and trying to justify it is ever needed. But I don't know, man. I just don't get it. Like, it's just so strange to me where it's like, I bought this thing because it sounded good to me and I think I'll get enjoyment and value out of it. But then to just I don't know, to go online and I don't know. I mean, I guess you could say I do it a little bit here on my channel sometimes, but I just feel like at some point you got to just ask yourself, like, bro, are you did you want this or not? Who cares what the internet thinks? Who cares what that person you're fighting with on the internet has to say? Did you want it or not? Are you enjoying it or not? Connor, thank you so much for the generous super chat. You're saying Game Awards are fixed. 90% are the journalist votes. 10% gamers. Rigged. Well, yeah. I mean, it is. It is rigged because if you understand if you understand the wider mentality of the gaming media and the general sphere of influencers, because make no mistake, the way this industry operates is you're either on the inner circle or you are on the outside. Those who are on the inner circle, they are the ones who get to vote, and they are the ones whose opinions count. And something that has been revealed consistently over the years in the video game industry is that there seems to be a certain kind of person, a certain kind of mentality, a certain kind of mindset, and a certain set of opinions that if you mirror that, you just might be able to get accepted into the inner circle. But if you don't mirror that, or if you slip up one too many times and you don't conform to whatever that standard is, then you get blacklisted. That was a lot of certains, was it? Man. And so, yeah, knowing this and understanding this does reveal that there is a level of bias inherently built in to the Game Awards based off of who is voting for the winners. So that's why I try to tell people, man, take the Game Awards as seriously as you want to take them. But I would recommend against taking them very seriously. Certain. Waylark, you're saying the media has always had the vote on Game of the Year. They have. But I feel like it's only been in not recent years, not like the past 2 or 3, but maybe the past like 6, 7 years or so. It seems like that's when suddenly, you could kind of see that gaming really has become something bigger. I mean, much bigger. Gaming has become the biggest form of media. And so it's kind of like expected that this is the direction it would go in. It's kind of expected. But there are systems in place here, man. That's the biggest thing I need to stress. There are systems that are put in place by people who are in charge. And those who are in charge, those who have the power, those are the people with the money. The people with the money are the ones who say what happens. It's exactly why you won't see, how like with these video game publishers, right? These video game publishers, we see that some of them do some of the most vile shit and they operate in some of the worst ways that are just deplorable, where it's like, wow, you guys fucking suck. Like, you guys suck. Where's the humanity, bro? It's like, doesn't matter. We're a business. We're cutthroat. It's like, okay, I get it. You're a business. You're cutthroat. But then anybody who has any level of real influence, and this is the important part that I wanted to highlight when it comes to the Game Awards. I talk about the bias or it being quote unquote rigged. Anybody with real, tangible influence that could cut deep and make a difference, they don't say shit. And they don't say shit because they know the moment you do, you're on the outside. And if you're on the outside, well, now you're on your own. Now you got to, and we've seen that happen. To be clear, there are people who are on the outside, people who have rejected being part of the, the inner circle or the system. But because of that, they are not allowed to partake, so to speak, in certain events. And that's why I say I don't care about these events, because these events are, at the end of the day, these events are in favor of these corporations that no matter what they do, no matter what they say, it's all about the money, man. It just is. And maybe every now and again we can see something kind of slip its way through, right? Where it's like, well, this is good, right? But what did you have to, like, what did you have to sacrifice to get to this point, to just let this one thing shine through? Probably a lot. I don't know. It's a tough call because that's, I think that's why Jeff Keighley gets a lot of heat. I think Jeff Keighley gets a lot of heat because he understands this better than anybody. Where, like, he has to operate a certain way that is antithetical to the gamer, right? But it's necessary in order to maintain the relationships he has with publishers to be able to even put on this show. If Jeff Keighley started mirroring the general gamer, right, and our opinions and our thoughts, his relationship with all of these entities would be severed immediately, and he would be replaced. I think that's the most important thing to understand. Somebody else would take his place, and he knows that, and he knows there's somebody that absolutely, if you won't do it, somebody else will. And that's a fundamental concept that's kind of baked into our entire society, where if you don't do it, somebody else will. So that's why you always got to make sure you know where you stand. But I don't think Jeff Keighley's unhappy about it. I think that anybody who's involved at a high level with the Game Awards, they're making money. They're making money. See, boss is chilling there. My YouTube studio crashed again. Hold on. Saying it's not just about the money, it's about the greed of those that are trying to keep making money for doing absolutely nothing. That's true. Yeah, that's true too. That is true too. And it's an unfortunate, again, vicious cycle that it's not exclusive to the video game industry. It's all around us, and there is a lot of greed. There is a lot of corruption, and it sucks because the people who do try to do the right things, the more honorable thing, the thing that just honestly I would say most decent people would probably choose to do, they're put in certain positions where it's like, you can do that, yeah, but it'll cost you. You hear the saying, nice guys finish last. I mean, it's such a cliche saying, but there is unfortunately so much truth to it. Not meant to be taken literally, but just the general concept of nice guys finish last. It's, again, if you don't do it, somebody else will. Every corporate executive knows this. Every person making the tough decision knows this. If I don't make the tough decision that's going to piss a lot of people off or ruin a lot of lives, somebody else will. So you just got to decide when you're in that position, do I step down and become one of those people that's affected by the decision, or do I take the opportunity to make the decision myself? Phil Spencer's a great example of this. It's if you people often wonder why, how come Phil Spencer, like, you could pull out like 10 different quotes from like the past 5 years that are totally and completely contradictory to one another. That, I mean, where he's literally talking out of both sides of his mouth. Why is that? And it's because, dude, he's one of these people that's put in this position where it's like, Phil, do you like the money you're making? You do? Do you like the fact that you have power in this multi-trillion-dollar company? You do. Okay, do you want to lose that? You don't? Okay, then here's what you're going to do. Whether you like it or not, sorry. This is what you're going to do. Because you might ask yourself, well, maybe Phil should just quit. If Phil doesn't like the way Satya wants to do things, if Phil doesn't believe in that vision, and he's not totally on board with it, and he feels like he failed the Xbox community, and he knows he looks like a hypocrite, why doesn't he just quit? Because he knows somebody else will take his place. He's not, you know what I mean? It's like, if you step down, somebody else, and trust me, there's a lot of people underneath Phil Spencer that would love to take his place in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. It's like how YouTube tells MBG what to do. Kind of. Less directly, though. But yeah, I mean, it is kind of true, right? To a certain extent. They've gotten better with it, though. I will say, I noticed YouTube's been more flexible these days, which is nice. In the way you can kind of talk and the things you can cover. You don't have to be as on edge anymore. Hopefully that doesn't change. But I mean, it's not, to be honest, though, it's not just Phil Spencer. I just use him as an example because he's one of the most forward-facing people that is always talking to the fans and the public. But this is the situation that pretty much all high-end executives in the video game industry are in, where, they're put in these positions where it's like, you're either going to make the tough decisions and you may look stupid or like a total asshole for doing it. But if you don't do it, we will find the person that will, and we will pay them, not you. So everything has a price, man. Anybody, I don't say anybody, but a lot of times people who make a lot of money, there is some level of sacrifice that's being made to obtain that money. And it's just the way the world works, So I'm sure Jeff Keighley, like I mentioned Jeff Keighley in the Game Awards. I'm sure to an extent Jeff Keighley is probably bothered by the things that, people call him out for. And sometimes there is truth to it, and he probably knows that. And it's like, damn, it sucks. But when things are not perfect, And if anything, in all things that we do, even with things like video games, things like award shows, we see the imperfections. We see the imperfections rear their head, and it's just that there are people who walk this planet that accept those imperfections a little bit. You know, they accept them to a degree where it's like they don't even see them as imperfections anymore. They just see it as the way it is, and it's fine. I think that's when things start to get really, really ugly. Anyway, yo, who decides this crap? DLC, remakes, and remastered games getting Game of the Year is stupid. That's what Brandon Johnson is saying. It seems like to me that decision was made by, I don't want to say Jeff Keighley alone, but, you know, him as well as anybody who's kind of involved. I guess there is a board. I think there is a board. I think they all kind of agreed on this. What was that notification I just got? Okay. Wait. All right. Just making sure I didn't miss any direct donations. Then it should be called Content of the Year, not Game. I would love it if they did that. I would absolutely love if they were like, we're not calling it Game of the Year anymore, guys. We're calling it Content of the Year. Yeah, I'd be all for that. They should, though. I mean, that's honestly, that's more accurate at this point. All right. I saw somebody mention I should have background music. I guess I should. I don't know. Some people really don't like background music. I mean, it is awkward anytime there's like dead air and I'm just being quiet. So it would help in those moments, but I think people are too used to not having background music. I mean, I got some background music for you. I could play this. Is that good? Yay or nay? Keep it or turn it off. That's the only one I have on hand. Perfect. Yeah, I could just sit here now. Some chill music. Thoughts on the Stalker developer saying it's not coming to PlayStation? Did they say that? King Sam, you're asking if I read Josh Z's super chat. You know what? Let me double check. Maybe I could definitely see myself missing a super chat. I do miss them sometimes. Let me. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I'm sorry, Josh. Thank you, King Sam, for pointing that out. I definitely would have missed that. I gotta stop hearting super chats until I read them. That's what throws me off. Josh says, my conspiracy theory is that this is all so that a Western awards show has an excuse to snub Eastern devs because let's face it, they are better. Oh, damn. That was a good super chat, too. Shots fired. Shots fired, Josh. Yeah. I mean, dude, this is why it's like, I mean, I don't know that it's, yeah. I think there is some truth to it, but it's not as like egregious. It's not as like forward facing as that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's that conspiratorial, but I do think that like on a subconscious level, this is a thing because there does seem to be a bit of, especially this year, we've seen a lot of clashing between the conversation between Eastern developers and Western developers. And unfortunately, it does kind of go back down to it does boil down to the politics of it all. And I know people don't like to talk about the politics and they get tired of it, but if you're wondering why is it that some people are like Eastern developers are so much better, Eastern developers get it, Western game devs don't understand it, they don't get it. It is because at the end of the day, it's a fundamental clash between the political views where a lot of the Eastern developers are, while they're not necessarily making their games political, but they are leaning towards game design decisions that are reminiscent of a time where there was either less politics in games or less left-leaning, I guess is the best way to put it. And that seems to be the problem with Western, not all Western, but a lot of Western game developers and game design these days, and why there's so much consternation towards it, because it does feel like it is about, like the again, to use the term, well, there you go. King Sam, you're saying Eastern developers prioritize gameplay while Western devs are pushing representation and progressive messaging. There you go. That's better put than the way I would have put it. And yeah, I think that is kind of what it boils down to, King Sam. There is a lot of truth to that. Again, it's not as clear cut as I think people make it sound, where it's not that black and white, where it's not like there aren't Eastern games also putting in representation or any type of progressive messaging. It's just, it's much less frequent or much better done if it's done right. And it's not to say that all Western games are doing that, but it's just that we have seen a bit of a pattern where a lot of the Western games that are doing that, they are seemingly prioritizing the wrong things and getting a lot of fundamental stuff wrong. Where it's like, guys, you put all this effort into this aspect of the game that nobody really asked for, to be clear. Nobody really asked for this, but you felt the need to prioritize this, which is whatever, I guess. But then there's like certain aspects of the game that are so weak and so fragile and just so undercooked or not well done. It's like that, maybe you should have prioritized that. Like the writing and the dialogue, or actually having a good story, or actually making sure the gameplay was more fleshed out. I feel like that is kind of the big problem that people are having right now. MBG's speeches hit different with the background music. It's so weird because I can't hear it. It's very strange for me. But yeah, that's the whole thing when we talk about the Game Awards. Is the Game Awards going to be dominated by, the bias? Is it a bit loud? I can lower it a little bit. Maybe that's a little bit better. Is it going to be dominated by this subconscious bias? Is Jeff Keighley going to ultimately be kind of overtaken by that because that's what has the most influence? And it might. I don't know. I do think that I think really what it comes down to is people. I think the people have kind of spoken, right? Where it's like games like Black Myth Wukong, games like Helldivers 2, games like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and others that I'm sure you guys can list off that I'm just not thinking of off the top of my head right now. But these are games that, like, the people have spoken that they love these games, dude. They absolutely love these games. And you would expect, with how much attention a lot of these games have gotten, how much love and praise a lot of these games have gotten, especially something like Black Myth Wukong specifically. Black Myth Wukong is going to be the most interesting one because I remember there was a lot of targeting being done. There's a lot of targeting being done to the studio, Game Science, and basically it was kind of being thrown around that, like, oh, they're like sexist and whatever and blah blah blah, and in reality it's like it was all a bunch of mistranslated stuff, and they're not. Like they're not at all. Like they were just like, no, we just want to focus on making a great game. Like we're not prioritizing any of the other bullshit. We just want to make a great game. And that's why I'm kind of curious. Like, let's see. Hold on one sec, guys. Makui Ninja says, don't think any of these Eastern developers are eligible for Game of the Year besides Rebirth. The gameplay is phenomenal, but their storytelling was not up for Game of the Year material. I don't know that people would agree with that, Makui Ninja. I mean, I guess, well, see, that's what's interesting, right? Is like, I guess in this case, I would need some specific examples, right? Like, what is the, like, are we talking about Black Myth Wukong? Like, is the story not up to snuff in Black Myth Wukong? Is it like, is that a game that you're thinking of? Because I would say, well, for me, gameplay is more important at the end of the day. I mean, story is very important. I do think storytelling, characterization, plot, pacing, all these things are critical to a game, especially a single player game, and they're trying to tell a story. But I do think the gameplay at the end of the day is still more important. And I think that's why it's like so interesting that when you look at a game like Elden Ring winning Game of the Year, it's like that there was almost technically, if you weren't like diving into the story, as in like trying to figure out what's going on, you could play that and not know any, like not even realize there's really even a story being told. At least not like an obvious one. But it was the raw gameplay, the sheer gameplay, the sheer mechanics on offer. And so this is where I think that like what's going to be very important to identify is that if a Western game is being nominated for Game of the Year, and it's like, oh, it's because of the story and the characters. It's like, but what about the gameplay too? Right? Like, is this what we would consider best of the best, top tier, 10 out of 10 gameplay? Because I would argue that sometimes with these these Western games, it can actually be, they can lack in gameplay as well sometimes. But I kind of get what you talk like Stellar Blade. I do get where you're coming from. The storytelling is not as robust and not as well done as some other single player games. But I don't know, man. I think that this is where it's just, again, I feel like this is where I'll throw up Elden Ring. It's hard not to, where it's like Elden Ring blew people away and was considered like a, but I don't know, maybe it's not fair to throw up Elden Ring. Maybe that's not fair, because it's like Elden Ring, its gameplay is so like exceptional in terms of like, I guess Elden Ring serves as proof that if you overwhelm the player in a good way with just the sheer amount of gameplay and freedom, that you don't really like the story. I'm not saying it doesn't have to matter, but it kind of doesn't, right? Like the story can matter as much as you want it to. But if you give us a game, like you can expect a game like Elden Ring to win a Game of the Year award just based off the gameplay alone. So I guess that is an option, right? Developers can create games where the gameplay is that good. We have Game Over Cholo. He says, MBG, I grabbed the PS5 Pro with a 25% discount. Granted, that's $714 US, but it's a bargain down here in Mexico. I'm hyped for Stellar Blade and Assassin's Creed Shadows. That's awesome to hear, Game Over Cholo. 25% discount. I mean, I would have liked a 25% discount. So I'm glad you were able to get it at such a good deal, man. And yeah, I heard Stellar Blade is amazing on the PS5 Pro. That's what I've heard. I've heard that Stellar Blade is one of the best PS5 Pro upgrades, and it's awesome. So I think you'll enjoy that on the Pro. Assassin's Creed Shadows, if I'm not mistaken, I think what that's going to be doing on the Pro is basically offering a single mode, but it's going to blend the fidelity mode and the performance mode, I think. So it seems like that's the approach Ubisoft seems to be taking. So Game Over Trollo, thank you so much for the super chat, man. And I do hope you enjoy your PS5 Pro. Nuke, you're saying Stalker 2 is not running well on the Xbox Series X according to early impressions. I see you guys talking about Stalker 2. Did some news come out about this game? Previews or something? Where are we hearing this? Where are we learning about this? Somebody also said that Stalker 2, the developers apparently said it's not coming to PlayStation. I would like to get a source on this. Does anybody have a source? Because I was under the impression it's a timed console exclusive and it will come to PlayStation. On 4chan, I read that Stalker 3 will release before Stalker 2. Damn, bro. Those 4chan leaks, they never cease to amaze me. All right, let me see. Some screenshots leaked of it running on the Series X. I mean, dude, these are pictures being taken on a phone. They're taking a picture of their screen from their phone. So it's like, what am I supposed to do with that, you know? What am I supposed to do with that? Thought it was a timed exclusive for 3 months. That's what I thought. I'm still assuming it's going to come to PlayStation. It really wouldn't make any sense for it not to. Apparently the next Xbox comes next year. Treble Champ, guys, where are you hearing these rumors? Where'd that one come from? I mean, I never did play the original Stalker, but I've seen, some trailers, and I like what I'm seeing of Stalker 2. It's a game that I think does look pretty damn good. And, if it's a game that if it were to come to PlayStation, I think I would play it, yeah. Phil Spencer said himself, handheld 2025. No, he didn't say that, Jakey. He said that they are making a handheld, but it's going to take a couple of years. That's what he said. There were rumors from insiders that the handheld could be coming as soon as next year. Am I moving to Blue Sky? No, I'm not. I don't know why is everybody moving to Blue Sky? I've been seeing that. Not everybody, but I've seen a lot of people moving to this new website. Like, what's the difference? If it's just like Twitter, then it's going to turn into Twitter at some point, IGN misquoted then during the Xbox podcast. Yeah, they must have, because there's no. Yeah, he definitely didn't say that. Blue Sky is for people that hate Elon. Oh, that would make sense. GameSir controllers leak said they are preparing a new Xbox controller because the console is coming next year with a new one, and Microsoft is telling them to prep chips. Oh, wow. I mean, that's the first I'm hearing of anything like this, man. I don't know. That's the first I'm hearing of this. The full quote was Spencer said the quote expectation is that we would do something end quote in the handheld games device category, but such a device is a few years out. It's on the GameSir Reddit. All right, maybe I'll go check that, Trouble Champ, because yeah, that's interesting. And I think we have a direct donation from Moonshot. Moonshot, I'm gonna wait like a minute or two to read it because usually you do like 2 or 3, so I'll try to make sure to get them all at one time. GameSir Reddit, let me check. I'm not seeing it. Paul, you're saying Xbox is cooked. Phil really screwed up. Jez said Microsoft would reveal the handheld in 2025, not release it in 2025. Interesting. Like, well, I think the assumption is that the handheld is going to be associated with their new console, like their next generation console. Maybe Microsoft could do something different and be like, we're going to announce the console like way early. So it's not that it will be a 2026 console, but they're like, we're just going to announce it now and just make I don't know. It's never really been done like that. So what's the point of a handheld when everything is an Xbox? Beats me. I don't know. King Sam, you're saying you're hoping for an Avowed PS5 announcement at the Game Awards? I mean, it would be interesting if Microsoft used the Game Awards as a place to announce another game coming to PlayStation, but I don't think it would be Avowed. That would be shocking, I would say. Well, all right, it wouldn't be shocking, I'll be honest. It's not like it'd be like, oh my god, this is insane. Like, but it would be surprising. I feel like that's unlikely. I don't think anybody would really be expecting that. You think Avowed is the next one coming after Indiana Jones? I mean, it seems clear that they do have more coming. I mean, Phil straight up said that. So it's just a matter of like what games and when are they going to get announced. I mean, I will say the Game Awards is a pretty good place to do it. It's a pretty good place to make it happen. Oh yeah, I forgot about that game Contraband. Wasn't that announced like years ago? With how the Xbox has been doing their console reveal from One X to Series X and S, they were all announcing 1+ years ago before launch. If there is a new Xbox coming in 2025, it would have been announced. Yeah, I guess you're right. The more I think about it, they did announce it. Yeah, you're right. You're right. They did announce it really early. I forgot that Microsoft did it differently than Sony. They might even announce it. Yeah, I don't know. I could see them announcing it even earlier this time. When Phil Spencer said there's no red line in the interview, I think they're gearing up for another batch of Xbox games coming to PS5. I think so too. that's kind of how I read it. Like it's not only is it just letting you know to expect anything to come over, but I think it's also kind of a bit of a primer for like there's going to be more announcements because it's been a while. It's been quite some time. I mean, excluding Indiana Jones. But is Halo next? No. Halo was the only one that Phil did mention by name. And he didn't say it's not coming. He just said it's too early to make any announcements. So that's also pretty interesting, right? Where like Phil's just acknowledging Halo is part of that red line, but just simply saying that it's basically saying don't expect an announcement anytime soon. Which makes sense because, dude, the new Halo is not even a thing yet. Like they just decided on an engine. You know, the next Halo is many years away. So, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the next Halo is on PS5 at this point. I think it would do really well too. I think it would sell millions on PS5, ironically enough. Oh, okay, Josh, thank you for letting me know. I'm sorry. Of course, the one time I wait. Josh says with a direct donation, I only paid 99 Canadian dollars for my PS5 Pro due to the immense trade-in promos at GameStop, getting 120 locked on Call of Duty and similar performance on Ragnarok. Well, that's awesome, dude. That's even better. Damn, only having to pay like $100, 100 Canadian dollars for a Pro. Not bad, bro. Not bad at all. Yeah, I mean, I've still been playing Call of Duty on my Pro, still playing some Until Dawn, and just kind of chilling out now, I think, kind of for the remainder of the year, coasting. And it's going to be interesting to see, I think, you know, I'm more interested in seeing what some newer upcoming games are going to do that have a little bit more time in the oven with the PS5 Pro. But yeah, man, that's a great deal. Good stuff, Josh. Yeah, that was the last rumor we heard about Halo. So that's 71 US dollars. Okay. The last rumor about Halo is that they're basically rebooting it and doing a they're starting by doing a Halo Combat Evolved remake. So, you know, it also said that the game is going to be developed for PS5 as well. That'll be a hell of a situation. But if you think about it, listen, if you think about it, if your goal with Halo is to bring it to places like PlayStation and possibly the Switch 2 and create new fan bases for your franchise on these established platforms, rebooting and starting with a Halo 1 remake kind of makes a lot of sense. Forza on PS5, I can't imagine that. Yeah, that would be a big one. I think a lot of people would be excited about that. So I noticed we're approaching the 2-hour mark, guys. I only had like one main topic of discussion today, so I'm going to keep this stream on the shorter side. We're going to go for the 2-hour mark. We got about 6 minutes left, so I just want to put it out here. It'll be a last call for any super chats, any membership gifts, any direct donations. Now would be the time to drop them. I just don't want anybody to be caught off guard and, you know, type out a super chat and drop it like 10 seconds after the stream actually ended. So we got like 6 minutes here. The Call of Duty Pro patch was good. Yeah, people were wondering what was going on with that, but they did post the patch notes for the Call of Duty Pro patch, and it seems to be pretty good. It seems to be pretty good overall. You could play it at like a smooth 120 now. Apparently you can hit that 120. You can hit that 120 in I think they said it was like close to native 4K now, so it's like not bad. Yeah, not bad. saying exactly Xbots were begging for a Marcus Phoenix collection for Gears. That was rumored. That was rumored for a while. But it seems like it's just not happening. It seems like instead of doing a collection, they're just focused on Gears of War E-Day and kind of like... I'm telling you, it seems like low-key there is a bit of a reboot going on with both Halo and Gears, where Gears of War E-Day, it's a prequel, but I think they might try to use it as a bit of a reboot, potentially, to jump off from, where we're, going back to Marcus Phoenix, going back to the beginning, going back to what people liked, and I feel like the same thing with, Halo Combat Evolved, but, we'll see how they do. They're going to do a Forza Horizon 1 remake. Obviously, that's what everybody wants. Crimson Desert is a day one buy. Crimson Desert does look good. Yeah, it does look good. I mean, there was that rumor earlier in the year that Forza Horizon 5 is going to be announced for PlayStation, and as of right now, it still hasn't been, but that would be an interesting one, man. That would be a really interesting one. I think that would be the... if you think about, like, the big three, Forza Horizon... You think about Forza, Gears, and Halo. I think Forza is the one you start out with. Before Gears, before Halo, right? You think Phil wants to hold on to Gears, Forza, and Halo? I think he wants to, but I don't think he's allowed to. I don't think he gets a say in that anymore. I think it, I feel like that's been made. It's kind of obvious now. I don't think Phil wanted to come out and say that there's no red lines. I don't think he wanted to say that. I think he was told, you got to communicate that. You could do it how you want, but you have to communicate that. It's all very meticulously thought out and planned, He didn't just say that off the cuff. Are we expecting any Xbox games coming to PlayStation at the Game Awards? I mean, I would say, like, there's a decent chance, yeah. I mean, that's not really why I'm going to tune in. I mean, it'll be interesting if it happens, but I'm interested in seeing what Sony shows up with and maybe some third parties. But yeah, I think there's a good chance. There's a really good chance, I would say. Yeah, I did. I got Moonshot's direct donation, King Sam. Thank you for appreciate you keeping me up on this in case I miss anything. We did read it. So the red line is now green. I mean, I think the most important thing to understand with this whole situation regarding Microsoft putting their games to PlayStation, the most important thing to understand is that, what we had heard is that Sea of Thieves was the true test for them. If Sea of Thieves did well and Sea of Thieves made them good money, then they were going to continue to pursue it, and they might get even a little bit more aggressive with it. And Sea of Thieves sold over, well, I think it sold well over 1 million copies, but it made them like over $40-50 million. Easy. So it was a success for sure on PlayStation. And I think that's important to kind of understand, that we heard that was the test. Instant Messenger Sama says, I'm wondering if we're ever getting a Metal Gear Solid 6. Once all the remake editions and master collections are done, there's not much you can do with the IP. Yeah, that's a tough one, man. I think Konami's probably not thinking about that right now, truthfully, because they're going to take their good old time with the collections, and especially the remakes. I think they're going to slowly remake over the next decade. I think it's going to be 10 years of, like, We started with Metal Gear Solid 3. Now we're remaking MGS 1, MGS 2, 3, 4, eventually 5. I think they might even take it as far as remaking the original Metal Gear games. I mean, like, you know, the OGs, the ones that pretty much nobody's played or very few people have played, that take place in between Metal Gear Solid 5 and Metal Gear Solid 1. I could see them doing a full remake for those, and that being the first place where Konami takes liberties without Kojima, but people are okay with it because it's the only way it could make it work. And then maybe way after that, maybe one day, right? Maybe one day. Who knows? Maybe by that point, Kojima, you know, Kojima would have done so much. He did all his Death Stranding games. He did his crazy Xbox game. He did everything he wanted to do. And maybe it's just like, you know, I did Fizzant 2. Kojima's, he's going to be like 78 years old. And Konami's like, old Kojima, would you like to make this the final game you direct? And he says, you know what? Yeah. It's time to close the loop completely. Metal Gear Solid 6, Kojima's last ride. We can only hope. We can only hope, right? Let me check on the poll here. So we did hit the 2-hour mark. So I'm ending the poll. We had 500 votes on the poll. How do you feel about DLC remakes and remasters being eligible for Game of the Year? 53% said they don't like it. 25% said they don't care. 20% said it's fine. So those are the results. But guys, I think that is going to wrap up today's stream. Again, I wanted to keep it on the shorter side. Not only am I just very tired today, as I'm sure that came across on the stream, but I only had one main topic of discussion. So I don't want to just like artificially drag it out for no reason. But I said pretty much everything I have to say on this. Tomorrow, we're going to get the official nominees for Game of the Year. And it'll be interesting to see what makes it on there. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. But yeah, just want to give a reminder here. I don't know if Devil Shooter's here right now or not, but he's not going to be able to do the timestamps for a little while. I don't know how long, but he's having a situation with his dog. And he's trying to, yeah, one last prayer for Bo. Good luck, man. And so, you know, I told Devil Shooter just whenever everything's good, man. Hopefully everything works out. Whenever you're ready, you come back and you do timestamps when you're good to do them. So, guys, just, you know, for anybody who's watching after the fact, we're coming back. You just have to kind of do your best, all right? Do your best. But, all right, guys, that does it for today's Sunday stream. I want to extend a thank you to anybody who dropped any direct support. If you dropped any super chats, we did get a membership gift today, so thank you for that. And any direct donations, appreciate you guys who are donating directly, because I'm only able to do this because you make it possible, and I'm very grateful for that. So thank you so much to the community and the supporters. And yeah, so I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I'm going to go, I'm actually going to go try to rest up a little bit and take it easy, because I definitely feel like I need it. So we should be back here tomorrow, same time. I will say tomorrow we might go live a little bit earlier, because the nominations go live at exactly the time I usually go live. So maybe 10 minutes earlier. And yeah, so I hope to see you there. But all right, guys, that does it. I'll catch you in the next stream. Until next time, take care, everyone.